Hello and welcome to Makers.dev episode number 50. This is a little bit of a weird episode. This, on paper, was going to be our interview with Michele Hansen, and it still is, but we had some very amusing technical difficulties where her video kept dropping out, but she could still hear us, so she would drop out, and then we'd start talking about her, and then she'd come back in and be like, I just heard you guys talking about this interview that we're currently doing. So I don't know what the status of that video is going to be yet, but we're gonna try to piece that together. So in the meantime, just so we are sure that we have an episode talking about deploy empathy, Chris, what are your thoughts on deploy empathy and the conversation we just had with Michele?
Yeah, so I think it's a book that we need because we, like you mentioned in the episode, we are great at building and maybe not so great at getting it in front of people in a way that gives us good feedback about what they want. And so, yeah, I think the Mom Test is another book that comes to mind, which is similar but different. Deploy Empathy is longer. It has, I think, more tactics. I think it is, I think it's a great book for especially the type of developers and business people that we are.
Yeah, I mentioned this in the interview too, which may or may not be at the end of what we're currently talking about. But like, man, it's like this is the core thing that I feel like neither of us are good at, of routinely talking to customers and getting the information from them of like what they actually want. And it's the thing that I'm tempted to do is call someone up and be like, hey, tell me what to build. What are the features you think I should make? And one of her points in the book is like, that's the wrong question to ask. Like that you're requesting so much of them to require that they have the self-awareness and the vulnerability to be able to actually answer a question like that. So instead, here are the tactics you can do, and here are the routines that you can get in, and the systems you can have in place so that you're regularly doing these interviews. And man, like that seems like the core difference between a lot of what we're doing, just kind of messing around, building fun software, and like learning about machine learning and AR and VR, and what Michele is doing, which is running $1 million business. Like, my gosh, I feel like if I made Michele the CEO of any one of the projects that I'm doing right now, she would be able to like get people on the phone, figure out what the core problem is and how they would express it in their own words of what they need. And she could come to me and be like, hey, you need to write these landing pages. You need to build these features and make this particular thing a little bit easier. And just in that slight course correction of like, it's all the same technical skills, you're just doing it in a different way. You're just pointed in this direction instead of this direction. Like, man, anything I'm doing, I feel like would just explode and would start resonating with people so much more deeply of actually solving their problems. I feel like this book is going to make me a lot of money and also make me a better person and a better listener.
Yeah, I mean, and in some ways, like we know that about ourselves, and like there's several ways you can solve it. One is like get a non-technical co-founder. One is get a technical co-founder who's just better at talking to people. One is, I mean, there's lots of ways to do it. I'm excited if, downloading this book into my brain just helps me get better at it. I mean, it's going to take, practice, right? Like intentional practice. But yeah, I think it has some great tools for actually, figuring out what to build. So, or not just what to build, how to tell people what you built and how to, how to do the things we're not good at.
Yeah. Tricky too, because like it's sort of opposite skill sets from what we've been honing of. To be good at building stuff, I feel like you have to be really myopically focused on like it's you and the thing, and you're building the thing. You're the lone craftsman in the cave, like working on building the best thing you can. And the skill set she's talking about in this book is sort of like dissolving your own ego and not making it about you or your thing, but just putting all your focus and attention on being as curious as possible about someone else and what they need. And the framing I came up for it was like, you want to be the opposite of someone with Asperger's. You want to like, it's never correct people if they get something technically wrong, even if they say like the name of your business correctly. You just sort of want to be like a curious interviewing robot that like is trying to gather as much information as possible. Whereas being very technically correct and being very focused on like building a thing as good as possible is a skill set that requires a very different frame of mind. You have to be very pedantic and be very like correcting things as soon as they're wrong. It's something I feel like I'm really bad at right now. That in reading Deploy Empathy, I feel good about being bad at it, and even if I do a bad job, it will help improve my life.
Yeah, one thing our book is good at is saying, if you're bad at this, don't worry. This is hard. Like, I watched a video by the people who did. Oh no, I can't remember her name. Kathy Sierra is her name actually, and so she talked about they wrote Head First Java, I think is the book, and that's the original book. And in technical books, and this is a technical book, right, about a topic that is technical, but Kathy was talking about Java, the Java book. It's like you have to remind people that this is hard, and like don't feel that you are less than for not having done it yet, or not having you're reading the book to learn it. And it's a hard thing to learn and a hard thing to practice. And so I saw that done very well in this book.
It's a good general skill for just learning anything, to recognize that, the first step to being good at something is being bad at it. Right. This is a slight tangent, but that's something I think about a lot in the context of people say, kids are so much better at acquiring languages. They're so much better at learning new things. And I think actually what they're good at is that they haven't had the experience of being proficient at something yet. So they're not comparing, when they're first learning how to shoot a basketball, they're not comparing their skill with that at their skill of, being an accountant. They're comparing that with like, I just recently learned how to walk and talk and like, I'm doing a great job. And so because they don't have an expectation of themselves that they're going to be immediately good at something because they've forgotten what it's like to not be good at it, they'll just keep trying and keep pushing forward. And that's the core skill that you need to be good at something, is just to be able to push through those feelings of discomfort of not being proficient. This book does a good job of that.
Yeah, and when you're a kid, like everything is like that. Like you mentioned, like you're not really good at anything yet, and so you're just not afraid to fail in the same way that adults are.
Before we get into whatever I can scrap together on the interview that we got of Michele, I would love to go through an abbreviated exercise with you. That's in the book. It's a list of questions you can ask, not having read the book, interviewing someone about a recent purchase they made. And they say not to do it with people that you know, because it's you're assuming things about them, and like it's not as pure of a process. But I'm kind of just curious to see how this goes. Are you down for that?
I'm down for anything. Let's do it.
Down for anything. All right. Let's do it. For anyone listening, this is I think in chapter 2 or 3 of Michele's book is just a list of questions that I'm just going to go down. And the point that she makes about it is like, even if you haven't read anything else in this book, if you just get on the phone with someone, a friend of a friend, and ask them these questions, you'll be able to get interesting information from them. And it's the first step of being good at this process of empathetically listening. And even if you do it badly, it's useful. And so like that's the starting point, and then you only get better from there. So, Chris, I'd like to thank you for taking the time to talk to me. I recognize this may be a little strange, but this will help me with my work and side projects and life in general. Is it okay if I record this?
Yes.
Oh, good. Because we've been recording this whole time. To start, can you tell me about a product you bought for the first time recently?
What would you like to hear about? We could talk about my graphics card, but we've already talked about that.
We talked so much about your graphics card. Here, her example in the book is like a new bottle of shampoo that she got that like, so it has to be a new thing. It has to be something that like it can't be, the box of Wheaties that you've been buying since the 80s. But if it's a new thing that you bought in a new category, like I think my new laptop would count, because like I've bought laptops forever, but this is a laptop that I got that's still a new thing. Like I'm not regularly buying laptops with an M1X. Is there something in that category that comes to mind? Or like I think the graphics card would qualify. That was relatively recently.
Yeah, I mean that's so. As another tangent, like in COVID, we haven't done a lot of really new things. Like I haven't bought a ton of new interesting things. It's like the same old stuff with a few notable exceptions.
Yeah.
Like the graphics card.
Let's talk about the graphics card then.
All right,
I'm excited to see if this line of questioning like will surface new information from something that we've talked a lot about. Cool. Can you tell me about this graphics card that you bought recently?
Sure. It is an RTX 3090. It is the top of the line graphics card that you can get for in terms of RAM before you start getting into the server graphics cards, and so it is something I could actually fit into a desktop in my house that would allow me to do interesting graphics card things.
It sounds like this is a graphic card that you bought that it was important for you to have something that you could fit in your house that would also be maximizing RAM.
Yep. The RAM is important because I wanted to do some image generation things which require a lot of the RAM, and the fitting in the house is important because I have used graphics cards and servers before, and it's always kind of a pain to remote into them and make sure they're running and all of that. So I wanted an actual computer in my house.
That sounds like it was a pain to have something remote that you had to remote into, and it sounds way more convenient to have something just in your house.
Yes.
Cool.
I like your tactical silence.
I'm going a little off script with other stuff in the book. All right, question number 3. Where were you when you bought this GTX 3090 graphics card?
In my house. do you mean physically or mentally?
It doesn't specify this question. I'm just gonna I'm gonna deploy some tactical silence and let you fill it in with more words.
I ordered it online. I always do my shopping for big things online because I can read reviews. I can look at different things. There were really only 2 choices though, because something that was very frustrating is that they are all the graphics cards everywhere are bought up either by people doing AI or people doing crypto mining, and so there are very few places you can actually get them anymore. So what I ended up doing is buying from one of the 2 reputable places that sells like pre-made whole computers with good warranties and all that kind of stuff.
It sounds like it was important for you to buy it from somewhere that had a good warranty.
Yeah, because it's very expensive, and so I want an actual, I don't want, some no-name distributor just sending me a computer. I want an actual place I can go to if something breaks.
Stepping out for a second, talking at the meta level, I think I'm struggling with like when to dig in and when to just go to the next question in the list, because I'm getting useful information.
I think it would be a lot different if this was your own product, because you would know intuitively like where your blind spots were or what you needed more
that's a good point. And now so yeah, I can follow what I'm curious about and dig into, like, I would probably have a question in the back of my head of like, how do I get more people to buy my graphics card? And so what you just said about having a good warranty would be really important, of like, oh my gosh, this is a sign of, warranties are very important, and that's not even something I was thinking about. Okay, cool. Question number 4. Were you with anyone else when you bought it?
My wife was a part of the purchasing decision in that I was about to spend a lot of money, and so I had to, get the okay from her. It was business money though, and so there was that. But no, I mean it was my decision. I was alone.
It sounds like for big decisions, you need to make sure that you and your wife are on the same page.
Yep.
Cool. All right, stepping out for a second again. I think that might be interesting. Of like, oh. maybe for my graphics card I have a page of like, here's how to sell this to your wife. Your husband's gonna have so much more computing power to process pictures of the kids or something. All right, going back in. Question number 5. How did you make the purchase?
How tactically, or like what extra detail do you want about the how? I ordered it on a website.
Can you tell me more about the website you ordered it on?
Sure.
Think is the question I should ask.
Okay, yeah. So I went with one of the 2 websites, which I thought was coherent, and obviously they care about technology and also their customers, and it was a fairly typical checkout flow. It was not buying such an expensive thing. It was not like an obviously it was a custom e-commerce experience, and that I think probably told me that they cared more than just having some default for it. Like if it popped up some Gumroad form and I was about to spend as much money as I was about to spend, then I'd probably think twice. but it was a custom tailored e-commerce experience with like the right messaging in the right place that made me feel comfortable actually putting in my credit card.
What do you mean by the right messaging in the right place? Does anything stand out to you?
Yeah, so they were really good about exactly what I was getting, because there's lots of options, and so like in all places you could see that this was actually the right thing, and then the right what to expect with shipping, because they have to get your thing, make sure they have everything in stock, put it together, then ship it, and then also since it's expensive, it's like they told me like I would have to sign for it, and it would come by this courier and all that stuff, and so there's just a lot of information of that I had questions for. It was obvious they had thought through all the questions that I had.
It sounds like this website did a good job of showing you exactly what the steps would be, so you felt really comfortable making a big purchase.
Yep.
Oh, what tactical silence.
Doesn't play as well on a podcast.
I feel like part of this would be much cleaner if like I'm excited to do this with someone who like doesn't know what this book is and staying in character the entire time.
I do feel I'll say another meta thing, which is I'm getting a lot of information just answering this for myself too, even though it feels sort of silly and we're kind of doing this sort of in a stilted way. Like as I'm answering the questions, I'm thinking through the other side of it as well. And so for anyone listening who wants to do this, even if you're doing this with someone you already know about something you already know about and it's kind of silly, you're going to get information anyway. Like I've already thought through several things about what I was saying.
I've been surprised by several things too. Like I thought we just talked about this graphics card to death, but like the fact that the warranty mattered and the fact that there were subtle things in the website that helped you make the purchase on that specific website. If I was someone who was listing these graphics cards, that would be really important information of like, oh man, if it's really important to people that they have really laid out the confidence of exactly how the shipping's going to work. How interesting. This line of questioning is living up to its promise of like, even though I don't quite know what I'm doing, I'm still getting information. All right, we got a couple left. How did you make the purchase? Question number 6. Before you bought it, was there anything about it that was kind of an open question about it to you?
There were lots of things. I knew that I wanted it, but I didn't know if it was worth the price that that I had to pay for it. And so a lot of my open questions were, am I actually going to use this enough to justify the price? Another one was I had to buy it for more than retail because everyone had bought all these graphics cards all over the place. So like there were a lot of questions like, is there anywhere that I can actually get this for retail, or do I have to, like some of the ways you can get it for retail are you can write a bot to scrape the like they release, all the things. And if you write and all of them are bought like in under a second by bots. And so you can write a bot to buy your own, but like that's a whole thing. And so like, do I want to actually spend the extra, money to know what I'm getting, and so that I don't have to try to, like do all these weird things to get it. And then there was the question of, I knew I wanted a lot of RAM, but one of my choices was this one or a card with slightly less RAM that is cheaper, or do I get a computer with like dual graphics cards? And so I had lots of technical questions around that. But in the end, I went with the single high RAM graphics card.
Cool. I find myself wanting to fill the silence. That's really uncomfortable. I'll have to practice that. Stepping out for a second again, like I'm just asking questions, and like what I'm doing, and I know what I'm doing, and still useful information is coming out of this. I think I'm like, this is what it says is going to happen in the book, but I think I'm still surprised that this is happening. Man, interesting. Like the thing you said about like, are you actually going to use it enough to justify the price? That could be a whole line of questioning if I was more interested in that. Like that's a thing that I could dig into. And in this book, there's questions I could ask about like what were those concerns and what were those feelings like? In the interest of time, though, I'm going to keep going. Where did you first learn about this product?
That's a good question. I don't know if I actually know. I mean, graphics cards as a thing, I knew about, obviously, forever. Graphics cards as a way to do AI faster have only been in the last, 3 or 4 years that's been on my radar. And then this product in particular, I probably Googled about, I mean, I know I Googled about what graphics cards are good for AI, and somewhere, I remember seeing comparison pages about the amount of RAM and what that means for, what you can do with it. And at some point, through all that, recognized that this graphics card was the biggest RAM one that I could get in a household computer.
It sounds like it was important for you to be able to do AI faster.
Yeah. I'm watching you struggle, not saying anything, and I enjoy it. I gotta say, it's interesting. I'm also I'm struggling because I want to make this an interesting podcast, but during an actual interview that would totally work. I go back to when I would interview people, and I had the same problem that just being quiet for a fraction of a second will get you a whole another stream of sentences. It's hard.
They talk about it in the book to go 3 beats longer than you would usually go of silence. And yeah, in an actual interview, I think I would just let you stew in that for a second and tell me more about AI. She has a beautiful thing you can say if you're silent and the other person thinks it's weird and they're like, hello, are you still listening? You can reply back like, oh, I was just, waiting for you to say something else. Or she has a couple of phrases that in the book of like things you can say to make it less awkward and like still keep that silence and still keep that pressure. All right, let's go through the rest of these real quick. What did you do when you first came across this GTX 3090 graphics card?
Like I do for most things, I did a lot more research, and so I wanted to. There are so many graphics cards that can do so many different things that even when I ran across it the first time, I wasn't 100% sure that I actually wanted it or knew what I was looking at even. So mostly I just did more research, and then eventually I switched from research to, okay, now I want this. Is it worth like twice MSRP, which is what I was finding I needed to pay. And that required a whole lot of other justification in my head, rather than just, which one once I knew what one I wanted, I had to justify the price in my head.
Did you talk to anyone else before you made the purchase? Perhaps a podcast co-host?
Probably. Did I talk about it before I bought it? I think I did a lot. And my wife. I think those may be the only 2 people I talked to. Yeah.
What were you hoping this would do for you?
The primary thing was I wanted a graphics card in my house so that I wouldn't have to remote into these ones in the server anymore. So that I could, I knew it would change the way that I did a lot of the AI stuff I was doing, and it did. And I just wanted the freedom and flexibility to do what I wanted to do without having to worry about, if it was costing me dollars per hour. Like all my files on the Linux box that's attached to the graphics card is like very freeing. Like it's really annoying when you have to transfer your files like all over the place. And so, yeah, just more freedom and flexibility with doing some of the stuff I was already doing, but without having to pay per hour and do a lot of file shuttling.
Could you tell me more about it being really annoying to transfer your files all over the place?
Yeah, like so I was using Google Colab before this for some of the things, and as an example, you have to retransfer all your files every time Google Colab starts over, and you could do it from Drive, but one of the main things that I was running into was if it's unzipped. So I had like 40,000 images. I think it was something like 40,000. And transferring from Drive to Colab, even though they're probably in the same data center or, they have whatever, just took forever, like an hour to transfer 40,000 files. If I zipped it up all as one thing, that would take less time actually, because it's a single file instead of 40,000 requests. But like, so every time in the morning I would start Colab and then wait an hour to transfer these files. And it just made it so I couldn't get anything done, especially because when Colab gets really busy, they will shut off your thing after 30 minutes of inactivity. So if I went to lunch and I came back, I would have to transfer 40,000 files again. So, yeah, that's very, very annoying. There are other cloud providers where you don't have to do this, but they generally cost more.
That sounds very annoying.
Yes, it made it basically impossible to do anything.
What other products besides Google Colab did you try before getting this graphics card?
So I use Paperspace, which is pretty good. And I looked at Lambda Labs, but they are a little more enterprise, geared towards enterprise. A lot of the GPU cloud providers are enterprise driven, or they're like AWS, which is, you can use that, you don't have to be an enterprise to use that, but it's so complicated to get things set up that it's really difficult. And one of the bits of complication is not like you have to do the complicated bit like maybe once, to get it all set up, but there are horror stories of people who accidentally either provision the wrong card or the right card, but then leave it on at like, $16 an hour. And then they get a bill at the end of the month for, $16 an hour times however many hours there are in a month. And that is kind of easy to do with some of the cloud providers, is accidentally leave on a very expensive card for a long time.
That sounds like it'd be anxiety inducing to be playing with that and potentially get a huge bill.
Yeah, exactly. And you can, there have been successful stories of people negotiating AWS down. They're like, you can see that the graphics card utilization was 0 for the whole month. Can I please not pay? And so they'll probably do that, once for your account maybe. But yeah, still anxiety inducing. How
did it go when you first used this graphics card?
It was, okay. So the very first time was annoying because I had to set stuff up, even though like the computer came mostly set up. Like they actually have a few different levels of setup for you. And I picked one, like the OS was already installed and that all worked great, but I found it really annoying to like install Python the way I wanted it to be installed and everything. After that though, it went great. The card does everything I wanted it to. I had to set up like VNC server and Jupyter Lab to do it so that I could do everything from my notebook, but it's actually running on my Linux box. But after I got all that set up, I've been really happy.
Can you tell me about whether it did what you were hoping it would do?
Yep. I mean, I knew the technical specs, and so there was not many surprises there. Like I knew exactly what I was going to be able to push through it when I got it. The thing that it really did that I was a little surprised by, I kind of knew it was going to happen, but it's like it switched my mindset from a GPU costing money per hour to a GPU that is just sitting there, and if I'm not using it, then it's sort of costing me money because I like paid for it already, right? And so other than the few cents per hour of electricity, it doesn't cost me anything to run it. And so I've been running a lot more just sort of models for fun that I wouldn't have run otherwise. So that was something I thought was going to happen, but it still surprised me when it did happen.
Would you buy it again?
Yeah. In my particular situation, I would absolutely buy it again. And in the future, maybe I will buy more if I want a dual graphics card or a different graphics card, right?
Thank you for your time today in answering these questions about a recent purchase you made. Cool.
Yeah.
Man.
Yeah.
Okay. That was great. Like, that was so easy for me because I'm just asking you questions. I'm just going down the list. And I can imagine if I was asking you about a product or something, or, if I'm talking to one of your customers about their problems in wanting to start a group, like, even just going completely on autopilot and going down the questions, like, it's eliciting really useful information and phrases of exactly what the problems are that you have in life. And so the goal of this line of questions then is that afterwards we can look at the transcript, and I should be able to answer the questions about your worldview of what your underlying problem was and where you were currently in that process, what the overall thing that you were trying to get done is, and like what the pain points are going along that road. And that's going to be much easier to do from transcript, but just from memory, like it sounds like and I'm cheating a little bit because we've already talked about this, but the overall process you were trying to do is to be able to do AI machine learning stuff faster, and you were in a place where you were doing it, but there were several frustrations in the way you were doing it, of like Google Colab, uploading the data, and like having the anxiety about not knowing based on where you had it if you were going to get a huge bill. And a lot of this stuff was new information to me. I was surprised. You mentioned another thing that wasn't Google Colab that we hadn't talked about before. Paperspace, yeah. Man, yeah. That's, I I want to do this now for just all the stuff I'm working on. I need to get people on the phone and like ask them about that specific thing. Because man, I like if I was working on anything in the space of graphics cards, I feel like that conversation would have just energized me of like, oh man, of course I can just add to my website like here's what shipping is going to look like. That's something people are looking for, and that's not even a thing I was thinking about. Oh man, I'm so excited about this book. This is a lot of fun.
Yeah, and like I said, it was enlightening even just to be answering the questions myself. So definitely, listeners, I would recommend doing it even with someone that you already know very well. Yeah,
cool. I guess we'll leave it there because we have a piecemeal interview with Michele coming up next of the conversation that was meant to be the entire episode, but because of internet difficulties was not. Cool. Anything else you'd like to say about Deploy Empathy before we get into our interview?
No, you should get it. She just finished the audiobook as well, which there's a whole other thing we can talk about, but she's releasing the audiobook as a private podcast. Now that it's done, you'll be able to buy it whenever it's done. I don't know if there's editing or something involved, but that was very interesting. That is a private. She released it as a private podcast, a chapter at a time. As a neat way to do it, I thought.
I loved how she did that too. Yeah, it's very. That feels like an embodiment of this ethos of like just ship it even if it's incomplete. So instead of her product being like a completed audiobook, which how many tens of hours does that take? She could do something as simple as record a chapter and then release just the chapter, and have that be an actual shippable product. And then and you're getting more feedback and things that you think people might care about, like the audio balance here is a little off, or I stumbled over a word. Okay, well, if the feedback you're getting is that no one cares about that, knowing Michele, like I'm sure she did customer interviews on this of like talking to people about how the audiobook was. I think it was a really smart way to do it.
Yeah,
cool. All right, let's get into it. Here is our interview with Michele. Kidding. Hello, it's me, editing Christian from the future. The entire interview with Michele was lost. I am so sad, and so is Michele, and so is Chris. We will be interviewing her again in the future and get you a proper interview. And until then, enjoy the next week's episode of Makers.dev, where I will be wearing the same shirt I'm wearing right now because we just recorded it. Goodbye.